We are live. Hello and welcome to I Helped Make That. Today is our 50th episode spectacular as we are interviewing the one, the only Eric Roberts about last year's movie Babylon. Thank you for coming on, Eric.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. If you haven't seen Babylon yet, he plays Margot Robbie's father. Margot Robbie's character is named Nellie. And what is your character's name?
What is my character's name, Eliza?
Um, Robert.
That's right, Rob. Yeah,
Okay. All right.
I've played a
So
lot of parts since Babylon, so I forgot the name.
uh, it is totally fine. I know you make like 500 movies a year. But anyway, again, thank you for coming on. So, yeah, the reason out of all your movies, saying that you make a lot of movies, that I chose Babylon is because when I decided to have you on, it was a little hard to pick a movie because it is so great that you've done so much work. You're such a great, talented actor, but you've also been in so much iconic stuff that it was it's a little hard to like choose.
Well, thank you very much. I have been very, very lucky in that there are lots of good actors. There are even some very, very good actors out there who aren't as lucky as I am, who get to work every day pretty much. And to get to work every day is the gift of an actor's life. I mean, it's what we all dream about, and when it happens, it kind of blows our minds. And I find myself extraordinarily lucky and extraordinarily right place, right time. And and I have a wife who is smarter than me, and she organizes my life. And so I have backup, and I enjoy my life.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you enjoy your life. But the reason I so when I just was thinking about what movie to talk to you about, because what makes this different from other interview shows is that most other entertainment interview podcasts talk about an entire career. But mine is more centered around just one specific movie.
Well, let me tell you why I'm surprised you chose Babylon. Because in the end result, in the finished product, I was barely in the movie. And the storyline I have with Margot Robbie is kind of non existent. So you don't know the relationship.
Mhm.
Uh, in the movie, in the scenes I shot, you kind of understood the relationship and what they had and didn't have,
Mhm.
could have, would never have, and you kind of understood that.
Mhm.
In the finished product, I didn't understand any of it. So and I was only in the movie maybe 100 seconds. So that's why I'm surprised you chose to talk to me about Babylon, because the end result, there wasn't much of me in Babylon, and it wasn't clear the relationship with Margot and I.
Okay.
So let's start from there.
Yeah. So the reason I chose Babylon is not just because of what it represents for your career, but because of just how much of a love it, hate it movie it was and how recently it's in people's minds. So I just thought it would benefit not just the most interesting discussion about your career, but the most interesting discussion about your movie, about the movie in general. But let's go back to the beginning. So for Babylon, well, I guess this is true for all movies. With as much with as m- sorry, with as much with as many acting roles as you get, did you have to do you have you ever had to audition recently?
Oh, I audition all the time,
Mhm.
because my bosses are old enough to be my grandsons and granddaughters. So
Mhm.
they don't know my early work. They hear their parents talk about me. They don't know my work, and of course, all work is accessible now. But they don't know it off the cuff. They're not familiar with me, and they will ask just a knee jerk response. I have to have him audition. And
Okay.
I say yes, because I don't mind
Mm.
auditioning. In fact, I now love auditioning because it's completely different how it was when I was young. When I was young, you had to learn your lines, put on nice clothes, go find an address you'd never been to, meet a person you've never met before, act like you're comfortable, audition, go home, and wait for the call. That was how I had to do
Mhm.
it. Now, what they do is you get to shoot yourself at home with your own camera up till you're satisfied with it. Then you send it in email, and they watch it, and it's all very painless, and it's fun, as opposed
Mhm.
to anxiety-ridden crazy.
Yeah. But what about Babylon? Did you have to audition for Babylon, or was that an offer?
That was a straight out offer. Damien Giselle offered me that part, offered me that movie. I was so floored when I got that offer because I love
Mhm.
his work. I love his movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I could definitely tell, like you say that a lot of people who, hire you now are old enough to be your grandchildren. He's more old enough to be your son, but it's
Right,
still
right.
the same thing. He's from the similar generation of those people, but we also know he's such a huge movie nut that if there's anyone in his generation that would be familiar with you and your work, it's definitely him.
Yeah.
Because yeah, but then so you got the offer. Did you have to like do any meetings beforehand before you got the script or started filming?
Yes, we talked, he and I, and
Zoom from location for Righteous Gemstones.
right. I was yeah. My wife is helping my memory. I was on location for Righteous Gemstones, and we Zoom talked, and and um, and I was in heaven. I was in my favorite job I've ever had, Righteous Gemstones, and I got an offer from Damien Giselle. I was in heaven, and I love making that movie. By the way, it was like old Hollywood.
Mhm.
It was not a big crew, but it was not a skeleton crew, and
Mhm.
um, and and we had extras out the gazoo, hundreds of extras every day. It was
Mhm.
like old Hollywood, and it was really fun to be there.
Mhm.
And it's an experience, not the acting or the portrayal, but the being on the set with his movie. And that was the journey. That was the experience, and
Mhm.
that was the fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm excited to talk more about that in detail, but once you got the offer, like how soon was it that you got the script and then how soon was it that you started shooting?
Well, I got the script before the offer illegally. I wasn't supposed to have the script, and I got it illegally, and I read it, and my part, as I told you, was much bigger than it was in the finished product, and it was a great script. It was insane. It was wonderful. It was delicate. It was period. It was so good, and I was thrilled to have it, thrilled to read it, thrilled to be in it.
Mhm. And then as after you got the offer, how soon was it that you started shooting?
A long time. So I went away and I made a couple of other movies. I think it was like 2 months.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. And then tell me, because I know you said a little bit about what the environment was like on set, but actually before you started working on set, did you meet up with Margot Robbie?
No, I did not meet Margot for the movie up till I got to the set for the movie.
Wait, what?
Oh,
What was the question?
He's asking me if I met your Margot before I started shooting.
Yeah, you had a rehearsal at the studio with her.
Oh, I forgot. We
Yeah.
did. Oh, I forgot about something.
All of us.
I'm glad my wife's here. We had a rehearsal at the studio,
It was fun.
hmm
and
Olivia?
it was his wife Olivia, me, Margot. Who else? Elijah.
Me, I got to play the
That's right.
person
Yeah,
in the movie theater.
yeah. And Elijah read all the other parts.
Well, that's cool. So when you were rehearsing with Margot, and then when you were on set with her, like, did you sort of work together to, help shape your characters and create them, especially since, as you said, you had more screen time in the first
No, in
version?
this circumstance,
hmm
I don't know your Margot Robbie's technique, but in this circumstance, I saw us as having the same technique in that we arrive prepared and
hmm
we're very nice to everybody, and we go to work, and
hmm
we don't talk actor talk. We just go to work, and yeah.
Okay. And then give the viewers a bit of a, shall we say, peek behind the curtain about what an average day was like to work on Babylon.
It was a lot of waiting. I've been in movies now for 45 years, and I have never had more waiting time than I did for Babylon, and I've never ended up on the editing room floor like I did on Babylon. In fact, I don't think I've ever lost a part to editing until Babylon, and but the normal working day was arrive at work, wait 5 to 8 hours, get on the set, and with lots of people. I mean, it was always big crowd scenes, big parties, lots of extras, lots of supporting cast, and it was slow. It was meticulous. It was methodical. It was the slowest set I've ever been on, but it was the most aimed. It was not like a student film. Everything's all scattered. Everybody knew what they were doing and why. And Damien is a leader.
hmm
What else
Okay.
about the day, though? We always had ridiculously great lunches cooked by chefs. We got great food all day long. It was like being at a party all day long, as far as your food goes. You always had sweets. You always had your Cornish game hens. It was crazy, and it was fun, and it was old Hollywood feeling. And then after lunch, it was slow getting back to work, and we'd slowly get back in the grind. And it was as boring as an exciting experience can be.
All right. But when you were shooting, like, what was that experience like?
Well, let me give you an example. My first night on the set, I have a monologue with a snake. And I'm supposed to be all effed up, from the party. And then I do this thing with the snake. And it was the first thing we shot with me. And he just kind of said, "You're up, go." Action. And it was like, okay, step out. And I just did it. And I did it twice. And that was it. And I felt very nervous. I felt nervous. I felt he was giving me more credit than I deserved, and that I feel I need somebody to tell me exactly what they want, that I can take aim and I can give it to them. and he didn't do that with me. He wanted me to show me what I could bring him, and that petrified me because I haven't been in those socks in probably 20 years, and I was suddenly in those shoes of a guy who was expected to dazzle. And it was a great experience for me because it made me remember what it's like to want, and I really wanted to be good in this movie.
Yeah. Now, as you were saying, a lot of your part was on the cutting room floor. In the finished product, I think you have like 2, 3 scenes, as I seem to recall. How many scenes did you have originally?
8, 10, 12.
Wow. That is a big cut then.
Sure. There
All
was a
right.
great scene in a party
Mhm,
after the aftermath of a party in the
mhm,
house where I'm like cooking and she's running around naked and all
mhm,
these people are running after her trying to help her. It's just the most the most beautiful visual period scene for me in the movie, and it didn't make the cut.
mhm. So, how many days were you on set?
How what?
How many days were you on set?
Oh, I don't know. 10, 12, 14. I don't know.
Oh,
Something.
well, okay. Then okay, well, so
Eight.
then yeah, all right. So, well, all right. So then, you finished up the movie, you then started making a lot more other movies, but, I'm sure you had in the back of your mind that this was coming out. Now, did you think this was now just out of curiosity, did you think this was going to be like the next Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I don't look at movies with any preconceived
Hmm.
hopes or wishes or wants or needs or
Hmm.
anything
Okay.
because I know better. I now
Good.
my joy is in the journey, in the making of the movie.
Hmm.
It's not in the release of the film and how much it makes. Even though that's always a great reward if it's a hit, it's a
Hmm.
great reward, and you get more offers that way. So it's a great dividend. But 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 that's not why I make movies. I make movies because I'm an actor to the bone, and I love my vocation. And
Hmm.
I've seen the world a few times for free. It's been a lot of fun.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So then I was just curious because, as I'm sure you can tell, they have some at least, tangential similarities, the Hollywood in the past setting, Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie. So that's just why I was curious about that.
Brad Pitt is a lovely guy.
Hmm.
One of the just real dudes. He's just a guy, and he's really likable, and he's really calm, and he's really sweet. And
Hmm.
uh, I enjoyed getting to know him a little bit.
Hmm.
And Margot was up to her earlobes in work. She was, working every second of every day.
Hmm.
So I just said, "Hi, Margot," every day, and we went to work. And she was overworked to the bone on that movie, and uh, I loved her storyline. I thought it got left on the floor as well. I loved her storyline, and
Hmm.
you didn't really have it in the movie. You had, her insanity,
Hmm.
but you didn't really have her story.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that because I think, yeah, here's the thing. I like this movie, but it is sort of a movie that has a lot of great elements in it, but you can tell stuff you can tell there's stuff holding it back from greatness. Like all of there's like so many characters and they have many compelling arcs, but because they're trying to tell all of their stories at the same time, they don't ha- they don't really have the room to breathe and flesh out. And I think and I think you kind of confirmed my worries that there was more that we didn't get to see.
Yeah.
Not I will say I do kind of I kind of I slightly disagree that we didn't get to see a bit more humanity with Nellie, her character. Like we did at least see a few scenes of her connecting with Manny, the lead character, sort of over their hopes and dreams. We did at least get the scene with her mom in the movie that kind of at least implied a little bit about why she might be the way she is. So honestly, it could have been a lot worse. In fact, for example, Blonde from the same year. I don't know if you've seen that movie, the
I
Marilyn
watched.
Mon. All right, it was this movie about Marilyn Monroe, but they kind of just portrayed her as sort of a one-dimensional,
Hmm.
hopeless victim
Hmm.
of circumstance. They didn't really give her any sort of agency
Hmm.
or like they just it's basically just her being like passed around and having bad things happen to her. That's like the whole movie, you know?
Hmm.
So I do think at least with Babylon, there is at least enough humanity with Nellie that thankfully made it in the final cut, but you can kind of tell there was supposed to be more because there are like plot points that don't feel like they are as fleshed out as they could be, and that's probably all due to the editing room. Not just with Nellie, but Jack, Brad Pitt's character, like his friend dies, and I'm just like, okay, because we didn't get to know the friends.
Yeah.
I think I had to like pause the movie and Google who that character was.
Well, good for you for doing that.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that guy who talks to Manny in one scene. But I still think even with that all being said, like there's still a lot of strong elements like great production design,
Yeah.
fantastic performances.
And the DP's work was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, great editing.
Yeah.
Uh I, I love the score. I think I have a friend who feels similarly like, and I think this is what who feels similarly about having like mixed feelings about the movie. And I think that might be why the would you agree that might be why the movie was so divisive, that there's so much great stuff, but then there's so many flaws at the same time?
Well, I think you kind of said it best earlier when you said there were so many rich storylines that to do more than like a glance at them was to go into them, and they didn't do that. They chose not to do that in the editing, and that is what it is. And I'm not a filmmaker. I don't pretend to be one. I just know that I read a script that was so delightful, and the movie was fun to watch,
Hmm.
but it did not delight me like the script did. And
Hmm.
so I'm kind of being unfair because I read the script.
Okay, I guess that's fair. But I will say that despite despite this, like I think like how do I say this? Like how do I say this? I think there's wow. Sorry, I I guess to be fair, at the end of the day, like it is still an entertaining movie, if not Chazelle's best. And I do think his first three movies had tighter narratives. But again, there are so many movies similar to Babylon that have tried to do what it did, and it did it worse. And again, yeah, there's some movies that are similar to Babylon that did it better, but at the end of the day, it's still a fun, entertaining movie.
Fun to watch. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the key. Yeah,
Mhm.
and we all love Damien Giselle. It's not like we're disappointed.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's
yeah, we
been like y- yeah, and to also be to also be fair, how do I say this? Sorry. I guess to also be fair, like, even if sometimes things happen, like, I think the movie in general just shows, one other thing it does well is shows how crazy just making a movie is, just being on set is. You have all these weird things happening in just the first scene where they're on a set, and they're like several movies happening at once, and then there's like all these problems happening with them. And I praise the scene in another episode of mine, but that that scene perfectly encapsulated what it most likely is to run a show you
yeah.
know
I agree. I totally do. Yeah,
yeah, not just a not just a movie, but like a TV show or even a
yeah.
podcast.
Entertainment. Yeah,
Yeah, entertainment in general. In fact, you know, there was a movie with Gene Smart, who is in this movie, that is completely different from Babylon in almost every way. It was a Nickelodeon kids movie called Snow Day. But
and
there's some trivia I read about this movie that legit sounds like something out of Babylon.
mm,
You want to hear about it?
sure.
Okay. All right, so let me pull it up. All right, okay, here it is. A real bank heist took place near the filming location, and the felons drove right past the production assistant, who immediately alerted everyone on set. The felons were surprised to see that they were driving through a film set shortly before driving headlong into and becoming hopelessly stuck in a fake snowdrift. The police immediately apprehended the two bumbling crooks to the amusement of all on set. Does that not sound like something that could have been in Babylon?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't reference that event, like have them drive into like a parody of like the Little Rascals or something.
Start a questions of Babylon on the internet with this kind of stuff. It's fun. People respond to this. This is cool.
Yeah, yeah, I think in general, even if the end result is kind of a mixed bag, I think you could say that actually helped people respond, help almost everyone who watched it have such a strong response, whether they loved or hated it. I remember, watching it in theaters, like, and when the scene with the elephant pooping on the two people comes up, there were chatters of nervous laughter. But then, like, later on, when Sid, the trumpet player, is forced to put on blackface, there was a legitimate shock and from someone, like a legitimate gasp that could be
Yeah,
heard throughout
yeah.
the theater. Like, and once people were walking out, I did see people chatting, like giving their own opinions. Like, this isn't just like a movie that you can just watch and then go about your day. It is a movie that provokes strong reactions in people. And, if that's, I think at the end of the day, some like a movie, if a movie does that, then I guess it's all worth it, huh?
Well, he did capture an era, and when you
Mhm,
capture an era, you capture the era's personality, and
mhm,
it's not altogether positive, and
mhm,
that's just the long and short of it. He showed a rainbow of colors in every scene, and
mhm.
and sometimes they were disappointing. They were disappointing colors, but
Yeah.
that was the time, and
Hmm.
that's why he's a great filmmaker. Even if you don't like the movie as a movie, which I do, even if you don't, you have to succumb to his images, to
Hmm.
his to his symbols. He's fantastic. He's a poet with a camera.
Hmm. Yeah. And I will say, just in general, like I was mentioning earlier, the scene where Nellie and Manny, talk about their dreams, that kind of shows the appeal of show business and why so many people get into it. Just, the speeches they're talking about it, with each other. Like it does, like, well, pretty much all of his movies are about struggling artists trying to find their place in the industry, and in whatever industry they're in. La La Land, one's a jazz musician, one's an actress. Whiplash, music. He's a drummer. First Man, an astronaut trying to find his place. You know, as a as sort of like an astronaut, as especially as he's getting on this big important mission, and he still does a great job at painting what the appeal of these industries are to his characters, or in First Man's case, what the appeal would have been, probably was to, I think it was Neil Armstrong.
Neil Armstrong.
Yeah. But because, you know, he was that struggling artist at one time, and so he knows a lot about it, and writes what he knows and tends to convey it well.
He's a
And
poet with the camera, dude. He uses huge symbols. He's brilliant. He's not since for me. It's also personal and subjective, but not since Fellini has a man used different images of mankind as a symbol for events, for places, for feelings, and
Mhm.
he does it in the same vein as Fellini did. And even though they're not the same filmmaker, I know, and I don't put them even in the same category, but they have similarities.
Mhm. Yeah, and honestly, I think this is the perfect place to end it. But thank you so
Okay.
much, Eric, for coming on to the show.
You're such a gentleman. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. Anyway, that was I Helped Make That. And this is again our 50th episode live. I hope I'll see you later for 50 more.
Me too. 50.
Mhm.
Peace out.